Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box post-NFL. The only thing I watched all week was a snippet of the Georgia-South Carolina women's basketball game. That was it. That's a whole week's worth of sports watching, a half of that game.
Oh, we got a lot to catch up with college basketball. Trust me. Here's what I'm not watching. Any all-star anything. That's right.
All right. Tariq, we'll get into that. Pat, you got the late, great...
Well, yeah, I mean, after his goodbye Instagram post, Gabe Davis, Bills wide receiver, I figured I'd wear the jersey now, probably the last time I could wear it before he's a member of another NFL franchise.
God, I hear Chiefs are interested.
Yeah, they say that about every Bill
No,
that's
they
leaving.
do. You're right.
If the Bills get a star player and they take 13, do you keep it around?
No, I like Gabe Davis, so I'm keeping the Gabe Davis jersey. I love Gabe Davis.
Got the Blue Jays hat, too? Significant?
No, I like the patch. It's got the All-Star patch on the side of it.
There you go.
There you go.
All right, we're talking All-Stars. All right, I didn't watch. Now they roll out the topic saying, what can you say?
Well,
you had the hockey and the basketball this past week.
Well, here's the scariest part. You didn't watch. I didn't watch. And I asked my son the same question, and he didn't watch.
Okay.
And so now we're at a point where the attraction and interest into these all-star game and all-star weekends have come to a point where there's no flash, there's no anything that attracts younger people to watch this sport. That being said, I'm going to offer something that is going to be very controversial. We need to go to a point where all-star games are not every year. They are in some sort of rotation with either the Olympics, where the pros would play with the pros, or maybe an in-season tournament, but you cannot have the All-Star game every year. I know people who grew up watching it in the 80s and the 90s want to bring back their, my days of when I watched this guy won the dunk contest and this one. It is of no significance to a younger generation. And let's be honest, the athletes, and you know this, have become sort of human corporations, don't want to risk going out there for the second half of the NBA season, turning a knee, ankle, something that will prevent them and their team from winning it all in June. So I have to say this. I'm sick of trying to make it better. Make it more of those things where we don't see it every year. We see it every 2 to 3 years.
You always count on you for something a little different, Tariq.
Can't have it. Can't have. Okay. I mean, let me tell me anything that this weekend that you can't wait for next year.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what the NBA and the NHL can't wait for, and it's the reason. Everything you said, completely reasonable. I'm fine with the Olympics being the All-Star game because you're getting more All-Stars too. You're getting different countries, and I love Olympic sports. What you said is never going to happen, and the All-Star game will continue forever and ever because Kia brought it to you for the NBA, and Honda brought it to you for the NHL, and the three-point contest is sponsored by Sprite, and if you want to check out TikTok on the side of the helmets of all the Maple Leafs players, there's too much money. They make a fortune. For example, I watched both All-Star games, not all the way through. I watched all the stuff surrounding it, too. It sucked. It was terrible. I felt like I had to as, penance for being a sports fan.
Even the other stuff, none of that was in it.
Look,
because I wanted to try to find something that somebody liked.
No, there was nothing I liked. I'll be honest with you.
Absolutely nothing.
But here's the thing. Even knowing that I wasn't going to like it, because the All-Star game for the NHL was in Toronto and I never experienced that before, I looked into going to get tickets. And just getting in the door was like $400, $500. Worst seat in the house to go watch a game that no one was entertained by. There is so much money in these games. That's why they continue to do it. And all of the leagues do this window dressing of, we have to fix the competitive. They don't care. They don't care. As long as these corporations keep cutting them checks, they're going to keep doing it.
Isn't there a formula, though? We talk about all this money going into that. If all the money is going into it, somebody's got to watch. And if somebody's watching, don't you at least have to try?
Well, now here's the other end of this. And this is what's so bizarre. Will the NBA or the NHL start to go with the NFL and bring in stars to try to make it a real all-star event?
Look, there's no way to fix it. I don't blame these players for not trying hard because they're not getting the TikTok money. They're not getting the money from Honda or Kia, right? You're a business. Like you said, protect your brand, protect yourself. But nothing's going to change. And we're going to keep lining up and watching the highlights of this stupid... They scored 200 points. 200 points!
Well, that was less offensive in and of itself than the way... when I saw a couple of highlights where that passes his defense.
Yeah.
The guy who won the slam dunk contest isn't on an NBA roster.
He's working at a fast food restaurant right now to make ends meet. The NHL All-Star Game is worse than the NBA All-Star Game is.
It can't be.
Look, here's why. Because at least NBA players have personality. They may not give you everything they got on the floor, but they're going to make it entertaining. Hockey players have no personality other than this handsome bearded man right here. No NHL player will give you anything worth substance that will make you giggle or laugh or think. And it's kind of changing with certain players, but not on an all-star game level.
These players do not want to risk the fact the second half of their season is up. Let's be honest with you. It's all about getting a ring, whether it's an NHL, NBA. It doesn't matter. The ultimate prize is the championship.
This is Rochester Press Box. We're talking Buffalo Bills next. Just passing through. Life lessons from notable Rochesterians, people you may think you know. Don Elhart, Maggie Brooks, John Dady, and Stacy Pension, J Mac and Soccer Sam, Fred Costello, and Jake Zembeck, along with 21 more. How they all got from there to here. It's a new book by Bill Pucko, available for $12 postpaid only from rocksportsnow.com. Try it, and thank you. Our NFL pick segment in the Rochester Press Box, brought to you by Connors and Ferris, your trusted and dedicated workers' comp attorneys and official sponsor of the Buffalo Bills. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Our Buffalo Bills discussion is brought to you by Connors and Ferris, your workers' comp attorneys. Greg has the week off. He'll be back next week. I saw the term soft reset this week. I thought, well, that's interesting.
Okay, who used the term soft reset? Can I ask that? Was it someone in the media or was it someone within the franchise?
It wasn't within the franchise, but
Okay.
I think it was a media football guy. So
Okay,
it wasn't
a media football guy.
Well, you know, one of these
you,
raft of experts.
I get what you're saying.
Soft reset.
Do you see it as a soft reset? Like we kind of discussed this last week, right? Because it's never, you brought up the idea of a rebuild. You're never going to rebuild with Josh Allen on your roster. It's impossible. You're going to do everything you can to succeed. I mean, I guess I get the idea of a kind of soft reset because you're losing Gabe Davis, it seems like, without question. You're losing a defensive end. You're going to have one impact defensive tackle on the roster. So you're going to have to fill these spaces. But look, the Bills have been here before. And I know I sound like I'm being an apologist, but I'm not. I'm looking at this from a football standpoint. If you are able to hit on a handful of draft picks, they are totally fine. Brandon Beane, the Bills general manager, has a track record of being able to fill holes specifically and get the Bills through to where they have to be. Is it harder this year? Yes. But if you look at what's surrounding the Bills, with the exception of New England, or excuse me, with the exception of Kansas City, God.
Are you finally admitting that the salary cap is real?
Oh, no. Salary cap is not real.
Okay,
the salary cap is not real.
Although I did say last week a different voice. You need a different voice in the room. That being said, I mean, really, where is this new team coming from? Like, you lose Gabe Davis, you're fine. Let's be honest.
You're going to lose a defensive line.
But I mean, let's start with Gabe Davis, number one. If you lose Gabe Davis or you keep Gabe Davis, you know full well you're going to replace him in either free agency or draft pick, like you said, going forward. Sure. That defensive line is a little bit different. Now, that defensive line is a beast. If you lose anybody on that line, how does that change that entire defense?
You're going to lose most of it, right?
But here's the thing. DeQuan Jones was a guy that no Bills had ever heard of. They brought him in as a low-price free agent. He's now indispensable. He's someone they could bring back again.
Played well, but how long?
You have a history, especially on a defensive line, of the Bills being able to use the scheme to put free agents in at mid to low cost or rookies and succeed. I'm more worried about wide receiver than I am defensive line. I'm more worried about keeping the offensive line healthy and where the money is there than I am the defensive line. Like, defensive line, I'm cool with. Gabe Davis was a fourth-round pick, and there were games where he looked like the best second receiver in the NFL, and there were games where he completely disappeared, right?
I think the national perception of Gabe Davis is higher than we have.
I agree with you, but because, look, his highlights showed up all over the place because when he played great, he played great. Do you know that he played, I believe, 5 games this season without a catch? 5 as the second receiver on one of the best offenses in the NFL without a catch. Or no, it was 4 because they won 3 of those games. What does that say? I don't know what the heck's
Here's
going
your
on.
formula.
Weird.
You know, people will tell you, well, that's the secret of the Buffalo Bills. Just don't throw to Gabe Davis.
Well, yeah.
And next year it's going to be easy.
The concern, though, is are you running a patch job? Are you just basically taking this guy out, putting him in, and then how are you going to address all the defensive concerns you might have?
Yeah, but you're describing every roster in the NFL. Every roster in the NFL is a patch job. What would you describe what the Kansas City Chiefs did in the last year? The whole season, the talk was...
Wait, 2-time Super Bowl winning champions does a patch job and wins a third.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying, right? The receivers were what were going to doom this team. They were going to have issues on defense. So how are they going to plug these players in? They did.
Yeah, but Pat, you're not trying to do it to stay at the same level. You're trying to do it to get better.
I understand. But look, all I'm saying is, look at what people were saying and where the Chiefs were in the middle of the season. There were questions after they lost to the Raiders if they were going to even win their division. So, look, again, I think we're too close to this because we talk about the Bills all the time. We see Bills news 24/7, and when things get dark, we don't have the perspective of another team. Every NFL franchise, with the exception of ones that are building from rock bottom, are running a patchwork every offseason. And until Brandon Beane shows me that he's not up for that job, I'm going to trust that he's able to do it.
How much does the uniform lose value if he leaves?
For normal people, it's worth nothing. For me, I love my Gone Bills jerseys, and I hold them forever, but you know that.
It's going to be in his Hall of Fame. You know that.
Oh, a very extensive Hall of Fame. Our Bills segment brought to you by Connors and Ferris, your workers' comp attorneys. Like it or not, it's next. Here's the Press Box Trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road.
You are going to love this classic getaway. Hello again, Mike O'Brien, your getaway guy. Yeah, classic cars. Wait until you see where I'm going to take you. Look for the Getaway Guy on Facebook.
Here's the Press Box Trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. You go like it or not. Like it or not, Matthew Slater retired from the New England Patriots. The significance being is, I think, he's considered the best special teamer in the NFL, and special teamers Devin Hester's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Maybe this helps Steve Tasker down the road.
Once again, we're back on the Steve. Listen, I know Western New York loves Steve Tasker. I don't hate Steve Tasker. I just don't know if you would put him in the Hall of Fame now after all of these years. Like, he might get an honorable sort of mention into the Hall of Fame. I know Western New York loves him. He's a great guy from all accounts. I'm just sorry. If he hasn't been in, should he have been in 20 years ago? So why should we be going in now? I know he's upset, but think about it. Steve Tasker Hall of Fame would feel great to Western New York and to Bills fans, but doesn't make sense.
But appreciation for things like special team kind of has an
he should have been in already. If he was going to get in.
To it. Okay. It doesn't mean he can't be.
All right, Jan Sturrud was the first and only special teamer up until this point, right? The kicker for the Chiefs back in the day. Here's the thing. Before Devin Hester got into the Hall of Fame, I completely understood the argument that Steve Tasker didn't belong because it was an offensive, defensive, and super exceptional thing. The fact that Devin Hester made the Hall of Fame now has me furious that Steve Tasker has not made the Hall of Fame. Steve Tasker is a 10 times better special teams player than Devin Hester, and I get that he's got the sizzle on the steak because he's got all those returns, but when it comes to punt return, kick return, kickoff, the things that Steve Tasker was able to do while still playing an offensive role for the Bills, if Matthew Slater gets into the Hall of Fame,
which he probably will,
and Steve Tasker,
5 years, still 5 years.
Steve Tasker does not. That is a miscarriage of justice that I cannot stand for. Tasker needs to go in this year. Like, how Hester's in before he is?
He's a little bit too close to this.
No, I'm telling you, I'm not.
I know.
I was fine with it. Hester goes in. Why not Dante Hall? Put him in too. Jeez, I blocked a punt in middle school. Can I go in the Hall of Fame for that too if Hester gets in?
Maybe you should.
Wow.
I'm so angry about this. No, because here's the thing. I resign myself to, maybe I am too close to it. Maybe, fine. Devin, Hester.
He's got touchdowns.
So what?
I mean, that's the attention getter.
Okay. There are lots of guys with touchdowns in the NFL that aren't in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Kick return touchdowns.
Play a complete game. Like, you wouldn't put a quarterback that threw 500 touchdowns and 450 interceptions
One of
in the Hall of
these
Fame.
days I'm going to roll out another name for us to consider, but we can't do it now, but that's Pete Gogolak.
Listen, I'd love to see him in the Hall of Fame, but they're about 10 years short of that.
He better go in.
Like it or not, you can't like it. What's happening to the Buffalo Sabres?
Yeah, I honestly don't like it. There's a couple of bright spots to look at. The team scoring is completely regressed, but here's the thing. I think they rolled the dice goaltending-wise, and they failed. It looks like they may have found their goaltender of the future in Ukko-Pekka, and he is on fire. He's playing out of his mind. He's not getting the run support that he needs from his teammates. You have a couple of farm hands, guys in the AHL right now that are going to be legitimate NHL players. You have contracts expiring this year. Run it back next year with the knowledge you have at goaltender now, and that's when things kickstart.
This is supposed to be in the bag. They were a point short last year. I said, it's obvious they will be in the playoffs this year.
Any way he can get that name mentioned on this show, he's going to find a way. Any way possible.
Ukko-Pekka, he's on fire.
It sounds like a Pokemon card.
Unfinished business is next.
The Press Box Stat of the Week is being brought to you by McArdle's Restaurant in Fairport. Come home to McArdle's.
In now to Eichel. He floated one. Score!
Unfinished Business is brought to you by Greg the Roofer. Better roof, better price. Better call Greg today. Save time and money on your roof and siding. Call us today for a free estimate. Special financing's available. Visit us online at gregtheroofer.com.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Time for Unfinished Business. Brought to you by Greg the Roofer. Start us off, Pat.
You guys know I'm a hockey dad. My 13-year-old daughter plays hockey, and if your kid plays hockey, it is tryout season coming up soon. And if your kid plays hockey and you know about tryout season, you know this is the most miserable time of the year. The kids are anxious as heck. They're trying to figure out where they're going to play, where their friends are going to play. You have friendships splitting up. You have parents arguing with each other. You have coaches getting in screaming matches with things. And that's in the best case scenario. Look, I understand you got to put kids in different places, and I'm not opposed to the whole tryout idea. I will say this. I think we failed our kids. Because it wasn't like this when I was younger. I mean, there were tryouts and things like that. But the business of youth sports has gotten absolutely insane because it's not just paying to try out. You're allowed to try out at one spot, and if that's the place you go, great. If you don't make that team, then they got to figure something out. There's money to be made by people that are training your kid to get to these tryouts at 11, 12, 13 years old. And here's the thing. I think that's a positive experience, too. The problem that I have, not only with my own kid, but watching kids that are trying out for hockey, for basketball, for travel baseball, for travel soccer. Why are we putting these kids through this pressure at that age? I mean, we know who the kids who can play are. At least most of the parents do. And there should be one program for every city, for every single sport. A basketball, soccer, football, hockey, baseball, softball, volleyball, all the way down that takes care of these kids, no problem. So they don't have to worry about splitting up away from their friends. Look, man, there's more homework than there's ever been. Our kids are exposed to more of the news than they've ever been before. I was an idiot teenage kid that didn't pay attention to anything, and I was stressed out. Why would we add more stress to our kids' lives when we don't have to? Just let them have a place to play and not worry about it.
All right, we all know the All-Star games all need some work. I mentioned earlier on in the show today, maybe sort of extending it out, not having really a game every year. So one of the big criticisms has been defense. Why not make all the defensive players from the previous season up to the beginning of the season, if you are a rookie, actually play in some of the games? Because defense slows down scoring. Everybody wants to see dunks, three-point shooting, and shots, but there's no defense being played at all. So take the defensive players of the year, that roster for their first team, second team, third team, put them on the all-star team, and create a defensive team that will try to stop some of these players. The problem with that is the players themselves are a product, so they can't really get hurt. Nobody wants to go all out because nobody wants to get hurt. They're all in search of a championship ring because we value championship rings more than we do the entertainment. Listen, let's make the main thing the main thing. If we're going to shop basketball, we have to show basketball. Fun, offense, and defense. Yeah, of course, nobody really cares who wins Defensive Player of the Year except for that one person. But defense is needed in the All-Star game to attract people. I don't think that's going to work either. So why not just take it back a year, take a year off, 2 years off, and bring it back when it really means the most, where you can get the most stars in one spot, play a little defense, just add a little defense.
They were some of the best in the world. It was among the greatest collection of basketball talent assembled, especially within its time frame. And for our purposes, all the more impressive because it happened here in Rochester. It was January 24th, 1956. The Rochester Community War Memorial was a mere 3 months old when it hosted the 6th NBA All-Star Game. The association was still in its infancy. The teams representing the Western Conference that day, the Minneapolis Lakers, St. Louis Hawks, Fort Wayne Pistons, and the Rochester Royals, would relocate, all of them. The Royals, of course, seeking greener pastures, as it were, went to Cincinnati just a year later, eventually moving to Sacramento, where they play today as the Kings. On the court that day at the War Memorial were 13 Naismith Basketball Hall of Famers. Although, to be fair, you wouldn't know many of the names. Maurice Stokes, who helped usher in the era of the dynamic black superstar, and Bobby Wanzer represented Rochester. Bob Pettit, who along with Bob Cousy was the most decorated of those 13, won the first of his 4 NBA All-Star MVP honors by scoring 20 points with 24 rebounds off the bench. The West won that game 108-94. Unlike its modern-day counterpart, it more closely resembled the way the game was played on a nightly basis back then, when teams averaged 91 points per game. Later that year, Bill Russell would be drafted into the league. 3 years after that, Wilt Chamberlain came to be, followed by Weston Baylor, Bird and Magic, Michael and LeBron. Only a fool would attempt to argue that the game was better back then, when back in 1956, Rochester played host to some of the best in the world. That is our Unfinished Business, brought to you by Greg the Roofer, and that is our show. There were a lot of Hall of Famers.
I love how you said that, right? 13 Hall of Famers on the floor. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. I think I'm in the Hall of Fame there. Everybody who played basketball gets into the Hall of Fame.
It's that easy to get in the Hall of Fame?
I think there are like 5 or 6 Rochester Royals who are in the Hall of Fame.
Then I have a solution for Steve Tasker. He said to play basketball.
There you
He'd be in the
go.
Hall of Fame.
We finish on a high note. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Rochester Press Box. There you go.
See? There you go.
There it is.
That's a good out right there.
We pulled it out of the fire.